All right, hi guys, welcome to our Screencastify refresher on factoring quadratic expressions. If you remember, we began by learning how to factor greatest common factor, okay? So I'm going to look here and I'm going to say, what is the greatest common factor between 4y squared and 8? Well, I know that 4 goes into both 4 and 8. So that means 4 is my GCF. So I do number 1, I factor out the GCF. And remember, this is the reverse of multiplication. So what's happening here is a division. So let's scoot this over. Oh, I can't move it. Right, hold on. I want to scoot this over so that it's lined up exactly the way it should be. Okay. So now I'm following step 2. It says write the GCF in front of the parentheses. I did that. Now I want to do write what's left over. When it says write what's left over, it's talking about the division aspect to it. So 4y squared divided by 4, that just leaves me with y squared because 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So 4y squared minus 2, that's it. Next example. So we want to look at this one again and we want to say what is the greatest common factor? Remember, that means I'm looking for a number and possibly a variable. If you look at example 1, we only had a number in common, but this example is a little different. So hopefully you can determine that the greatest common number here is 5. 5 and 20 both have 5 in common. And then I'm looking at the variable. I have x to the 4th, which, remember, has 4 x's. And I also have x cubed, which has 3. So I'm looking and I'm like, okay, how many do they actually have in common? Well, they have 3 in common. Okay, well then there you go. That's my common variable. So together, my GCF, my greatest common factor, is 5x cubed. So that's what I want to factor out here and divide these two terms by. So I have 5x cubed in the front. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And x to the 4th divided by x cubed, well, you see here, I'm only left with 1. I'm only left with 1x here. So x plus 20 divided by 5 is 4. And we know x cubed and x cubed will cancel out. So I am now left with 5x cubed times x plus 4. Okay? And that is GCF. Here's a couple more examples on GCF. So I need to determine what do 14 and 35 have in common. So 14 and 35 both have the number 7 in common. And then I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, well, what do x to the 5th and x to the 8th have in common? Remember, you can always take out the smallest x. So if this is x to the 5th and this is x to the 8th, that means I'm going to be taking out x to the 5th power because 8 has enough to give to 5. So now I'm like, all right, well, if I redistribute this back in, what would I need to have, right? So this is where the division comes into play. So I divide both of these by 7x to the 5th, and I get 2, because the x to the 5ths cancel, minus 35 divided by 7 is 5, x to the 8th divided by x cubed is x to the 8th divided by x to the 5th is x cubed. So that's what needs to go here. 2 minus 5x cubed. Okay? And again, that's it. We just factored out the greatest common factor. And hopefully you remember the way that you check to see if you did this correctly is by literally distributing it back in. So if I do this and I do 7x to the 5th times 2 minus 5x cubed, let's just check real quick. 7 times 2 gives us 14, x to the 5th. And then 7x to the 5th times 5, that gives us 35. And if you forgot what happens with the exponents when you multiply, they get added. So 3 plus 5, that gives me x to the 8. So now we know we did this correctly. So next one is a bit longer. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do 3, 24, and 60 have in common? Well, I know 3 goes into 6, so it has to go into 60. I also know 3 goes into 24, so that looks good. And then I see x squared, and x to the third power. So that means I can take out the smallest x. So I'm going to divide each of these by 3x, because that is my greatest common factor. So I put that in front, 3x, and then I just bring down from what's being divided. 3x to the third power divided by 3x. Well, the 3's cancel. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And if I have 3x's here and 1x here, okay, there we go. Still not the cutest 8, but it's okay. So these are all going to go down by 1 power. So x squared divided by x is just going to become x. And these x's over here are going to cancel. And I know 60 divided by 3 is 2. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So 60 divided by 3 is 20. And since this was just a GCF problem, we are finished.